really would need if you're a marine biologist, a fishery officer, or anything else. And when you cover 200 kilometers of coastline that you know is notorious for being pristine, and these are all the samples. Now let's jump into what we done. We went all the way up to Molly's Reach, and so just for Molly's Reach is around where we're on to right now. We're moved around a bit because we got Terry here, and Terry was out on all the beaches. Terry done all the walking, hurt his ankle, kept going regardless. 9 days, low tides. The last tide we tried that we got up, left here at 4:30 in the morning, and we never missed one. We understood. Here's another shot of me on groups at Wakefield Beach, and we're coming to all of that now. And so let's get started, folks. Now this is outside of Lund. This is about 2 kilometers south of Lund, and that's this side, south of Vancouver side of Desolation Sound. And let me bring you back that chart so I can give you some context. So I gotta pull my hand back. At the top up there is Desolation Sound. And so when you come back, I can't reach up there because my fingers will disappear. But you can see a name up there. It says, I can't even read it. But the top of that island, basically, on the shoreline, is the sample. And I know this is rushed and everything because we got so much to get through. But we're gonna start there with this show, and we're gonna show you what the beaches starts to look like. And when you come up close, you see no whelks, you see no snails, you see no limpets, you see no sea anemones, and you barely see any vegetation. There is only 4 types of vegetation, or 2 types of vegetation. Algae was the popcorn kelp, also known as kelp weed, and we'll give you some really good close-ups of that here in a few moments. And we'll just wait till we get to that point, I guess is better. Now this is low tide, a couple of kilometers south of Lund, and that's up from Powell River. You can see there's no kinds of vegetation life there. We'll get much more details coming up here for you. The mussels we're seeing are 1 generation, which is normal, and they're the indigenous mussels, and there's these little tiny patches once in a while you find of them. And so don't be fooled by close-up shots. We'll got much better qualities coming up for you. And now the kelp you're seeing is the only kelp you'll see throughout the 16 spots we're going to try to get through. So we got to keep moving because we got a lot to get through. You're going to see, and we'll get a lot of close-ups coming. We got a lot of close-ups coming. And I jumped ahead on you, sorry. So a few miles south of Lund, let me backtrack. A few miles south of Lund, we get up to the beaches. We're going to put everything up with the nuclear proctologist after the show, and we have a live stream coming up tonight. Now the rocks on the first couple of beaches, we really didn't understand the significance of what we were looking at and what we were doing. You got to realize we had a little tiny budget, and that we went out with a theory, not understanding what we were up against and what we were going to find, not understanding that, you know, as the days progress. And so that's why you're going to see things the way you're going to see them. But here's the kelp that is notorious throughout the video, and that's called kelp weed. And then you can see the green stuff, the fluorescent, is what, and that was a couple of miles once again south of Lund. I kind of made a mistake by showing you the other pictures early, but we got a lot to get through. I apologize. And let's keep going. Now that's fluorescent type stuff you're seeing in that picture is lettuce kelp, and it's very straggly, it's very patchy. There's no bull kelp, there's no insects. As you look into the pool once again, there's no life there. So let's jump over to the desktop presenter, and let's get over and get into the real stuff. I got to go live with that to make sure it works. I'm going to be just like a minute kind of figure this out. We'll bring up everything. So Gibson, or a few more miles further outside, I already covered it. Let me get rid of that and open that all up for you. Hang on, folks. So it can get pretty confusing, I know. And so we're going to take our time, make sure it all shows up over here. This is a few extra miles past the last spot, south of Lund. and I'll come back to the charts for you after. No, that's the same spot. That's the shoreline. Okay, so the next folder is the one I wanted. That's bound to happen because we've been through so much. So the next spot is Gibbons. Gibson's. Is this the name of the park? It's a park.
Gibson.
It's a provincial park on the way to Lund, on the seaside. And these shells, most of these are dead. Right, you can see they're not. Most of these are open up, and that's normally spawn out. So the ocean is still trying to spawn out. Now you can see the two types of kelp we're talking about, and the pictures will get much better as the moments go on here, folks. But we got what we got because we had a tiny budget to work with, but we did do really good. We went and got a stand after these pictures, and so this was a couple of miles. Everything Terry walked through, every pictures. Because we can't show you everything, but we're going to put everything up on the site. And this is just what I was going to try to show you. And we'll run through these people. This is Wellington Beach. This is Powell River. So this affects a lot of people. So it's quite devastating. All of this is very devastating because it affects everybody on the planet. But it personally affects me because this is where I live. And so the bull kelp, once again, and the fluorescent kelp is dominating. There was no life there. This is a park. At the top of the picture, you can see a limpet. There's a limpet there, and there's a starfish. You can't see him, but there's one starfish there. Once again, right along the wharfing area where it was normally tons of life, there was no life, and that was Wellington Beach in Powell River. So we'll get up to the good stuff. Brew Bay is down the road. Now Brew Bay had no life whatsoever except for 4 species. It had, and I don't know if there was any purple starfish here. There was only 1 or 2 at the other places, but we got so much to get through. We'll get some high quality coming up here, some higher quality, and we're going through a lot of pictures today. And you can see what I mean by patches, just little patches of mussels, nothing else. No insects, no sand fleas, no flies, no crows. No indigenous wildlife whatsoever. There was no activity on the ocean. All the birds were missing. All the bull kelp is missing. You can see some of the barnacles are hanging on. Most of it is dead. Now what's important is you see that twine on the mussel. That is missing from most of the mussels. But in this place, at least we're finding that. And we got to keep going. I don't know how many pictures I got here. I'll flash through the pictures. But everything is going to go up on nuclearproctologist.org. Once again, all we find is mussels. All we find is nothing. Devoid of all life, devoid of all habitat, devoid of the indigenous species that we expect to see. That kelp you're seeing there is not even healthy, but it's still trying. It's still showing up. It's just single generations of anything that we see. It's obvious to me that this happened quite a while back, that this was an extinction event, in the sake of everything on the shoreline was wiped out in a short period of time. And so the disposition would have came over from Japan because it was 3 melter reactors. And so that came over and it continued to come over. And so that continued to wash out to the coastlines. And we get heavy rains in British Columbia. It's total desolation. We don't see any recent dead life. We don't see any carcasses. We didn't see any kind of anything clinging to a rock that didn't look like it was trying to fall off the rock.
Dead.
Oh, and now that picture back there, you can see there's some oysters. Oysters? I can't even pronounce it.
Oysters. Yeah.
Oysters. There is some oysters right there, folks. And you can see some mussels are hanging on. Some of the bigger mussels, they were unusual. We didn't see them anywhere else. And the name of this place was...
That's in Gibson's.
No, that was... hang on, I'll get the folder up. That was Brew Bay Road.
Oh, yes.
Brew Bay Road. But the Pylands never had no sea anemones, no starfish, no kind of life. It just had the same thing everywhere you went. Everything was devoid of life. There was no whelks, no snails. There was no limpets. There was none of the normal indigenous critters that I'm used to seeing my whole life on the ocean. So we'll switch off that and keep going. and we've got lots here. As we go further down the road, we look harder. That's a little bit further down the road. That's another popular beach I usually go to, and I didn't clue in like everybody else until the last 9 days when it really struck home for me in the boat ride. That's where we clued in, and you can see it's totally devoid. And if you don't know what that looks like, we'll run back to the Wirecast for a second, and we'll show you what some of that life should look like. On the shorelines, you would expect to see at low tide lots of these little types. There's all types of these snails. They are very dominant. In the tidal pools, you would expect to see a very rich and vibrant. You would expect to see all kinds of sand dollars. You would expect to see all kinds of starfish, all kinds of sea anemones, and you would expect to see them hanging off the rocks in large groups. Let's keep going. We'll go live back to the desktop presenter. Let's roll through another bunch of these. This was a few miles down the road. These are all pristine places in between parks. And we got a lot of parks we're going to cover. Public parks here right along for 200 kilometers. And that's what Desolation Sound is all like this. No different whatsoever. And we got videos of that. We'll be posting that up on Beautiful Girl by Dana. I can't put that up on the Nuclear Proctologist, but I will link to over from there to those videos on the same site you're probably watching this on, or linked over. And as you can see, we work with a $300 camera, and we work with a $300 boat ride, and everything else came out of Terry's pockets, literally and figuratively, including food and fuel, transportation. And we're not saying nothing, we're just letting you know the budget we had so you can understand the quality and the things that we've done in more context. But the enormity of it is what drove us. We wanted to find life so we can say, instead of there's a total extinction, that there's serious life still living and we need to do something immediately, because we know how big of a range it was. Each day became more surreal to get up in the morning. It became more surreal to drive down to these beaches. Now, this kelp, really good shots, Terry. You've done a good job on that. I left you out of the conversation up to now. But you're the guy who walked out here, Terry. And you had to work like a dog just to find mussels. You had to work like a dog just to get pictures of a couple of starfish that will be coming up here. And there's a seagull here coming up in this picture. We'll jump ahead to that picture. And it'll look a bit funny to people right here. Where's that seagull to? Is he in this picture? Yeah, here he is. He's out there by himself, and he's surrounded by 4 species. There's no other species, no insects, there's no marine life. This is prestigious areas. These are gorgeous, absolutely unimaginable, gorgeous area. And I thought it was striking, utterly striking, this picture right here. This picture right here where he just looks at the water. To me, that really symbolized everything I've seen in any bird that I had saw in 9 days. There wasn't very many of them. We can put all the birds we saw, all the mussels we saw, all the starfish we saw, in 200 kilometers for sure, in the back of a pickup truck. Most likely in a wheelbarrow. And it's really something shocking. Yesterday we hardly talked on the way home from the end. And let me explain something to you. What you're seeing here, there should be insects. There should be entire communities just right there in that little tiny spot, just in a 5-foot patch. You shouldn't be able to count the different life there without spending a whole lot of time there. And there's zero. It's zero. The rocks are naked. Right around the tidal pools, there's nothing gripping onto them. Little tiny things are trying to hang on. But Fukushima is not going to allow that to last. And it's probably going to kill everything out there, but it can't come back. It won't kill, it might leave something out there somewhere and it can repopulate. You think about a lingcod can lay, or a codfish can lay 700,000 eggs. You think about how the ocean is a soup of life, and under normal circumstances, if you were to have a freak act of nature that wiped out the coastline, the ocean, the soup of life, would repopulate it immediately. And so when you go there, and right across the board, there's nothing. But you see how that kelp is actually healthy looking. A lot of the mussels, even though they're patchy, they're trying.